Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to this Bristol Benjamin Meeker Distinguished Visiting Professor Showcase Talk, which is part of the University of Bristol International Festival of Research and Partnerships. My name's Lauren Winch and I'm the manager of the International Research Partnerships portfolio at the University of Bristol. Before I hand over to our chair for this session, just a few words of housekeeping from us. Please ensure that your microphone remains muted unless the chair invites you to speak. It's just to minimise background noise or any disturbances during the talks. The session will be recorded and posted to our IRP YouTube channel, which can be accessed from our website. So please be aware that you are being recorded, and by attending, you're consenting to being part of that recording. Please ensure that you've added your name rather than being listed as guest, as the IRP team will be monitoring attendees. And we also need to know who's asking questions to our speakers. If you do have any questions, please use the chat function to type your comments or questions, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. You can put those in at any point, but the session chair will get to as many of the questions as she can with the time that allows at the end of the presentation. So you can ask them whenever, but we'll come to them right at the end. With those comments and questions, we just ask that you're please respectful. We do reserve the right to remove anyone whose comments are deemed offensive or derogatory. So please be nice. And so without further ado, I would like to hand over to our former Bristol Benjamin Meeker Distinguished Visiting Professor, Dr. Szabolcs Musca, who has actually now joined the University of Bristol, but visited us from the University of Lisbon in Portugal at the time, where he's still an affiliated researcher, and also our session chair today, who was his University of Bristol host, Dr. Katja Krebs from the theatre department.
Thank you, Lauren. Yes, I first met Dr. Szabolcs Musca in 2008 at a conference in Târgu Mureș in Romania on theatre, art, culture, intercultural and interethical approaches, it was called. I was delivering one of my very first keynotes, and Szabolcs was there as a theatre critic and journalist. Shortly after, he started his PhD with me here at Bristol, and he has since become a much valued colleague, continues to be on a very exciting pan-European research trajectory. No longer am I his PhD supervisor and early career advisor. Instead, Dr. Musca is a colleague, a research collaborator, and a driving force behind the Migrant Dramaturgies International Research Network, where he is the board director and founding father. Dr. Musca is a theatre scholar and curator of collaborative arts and cultural projects. He is research associate at the Centre for Theatre Studies at the University of Lisbon and research fellow here at the University of Bristol. His work is currently focused on migrant theatre and human rights, transnational and cross-cultural theatre, dramaturgy, and socially engaged performance. He is guest editor of Performing Ethos's special journal issue on theatre and migration between ethics and aesthetics, and his co-edited collection, Redefining Theatre Communities, International Perspectives on Community-Conscious Theatre Making, was published by Intellect in 2019. Szabolcs is also the regional managing editor at the Theatre Times and an active member of the International Federation for Theatre Research, also a member of the Theatre and Performance Research Association, the International Network of Italian Theatre, and the European Association for the study of theatre and performance. And it is with absolute pleasure that I introduce him and welcome you to this presentation following Szabolcs Benjamin Meeker Visiting Fellowship here at Bristol.
Oh, thank you, Katja. That was really interesting going back to 2008, actually. So thanks so much for having me today, and I just wanted to say a few words about the Meeker professorship, really, because there was such an amazing opportunity, and it was key in establishing research collaboration with Bristol after I left after my PhD, and also really in the development of a series of research and outreach projects. We worked together with Katja, and also building an academic and theatre makers community around this research on theatre and migration. So I would hope to share my presentation here. Let me find it. Yeah, so hopefully it works. Can you see it at all? Yeah, good. So today, so in this presentation, really, I would like to, so instead of giving a lecture on migrant theatre, I would really like to kind of trace some of the key elements of our collaboration with Katja and with the theatre department at Bristol, and really talk about some of the concepts that kind of frame this collaboration and this research. So in this presentation, you will see 3 definitions on migration and theatre, and you need to imagine it as an arch, you know, from the beginning of our collaboration until now, and it still continues. So the first definition, if I can, yes, so the first definition we adopted from Emma Cox. And it sounds like this. If I can, how can I? Yes, I can do that now. So it says a migrant can be a person who leaves one home and makes another, or one with multiple homes or none, or a person who eschews geographical fixity altogether. Migrants can be individuals, families, or political communities. They may move by choice or by compulsion. They may be more welcome or shunned. And each of these contingencies can bleed into another. And we found this definition particularly useful because we were looking at going beyond the legal and the policy categories of migration, really. And so, you know, we really thought that this is a good definition to look at the triad of look at migration as a triad of movement, identity, and community, really. And so from this, we also turn to, you know, what migrant theatre might look like, or what migrant theatre is or can be. And according to Emma Cox again, her definition on theatres of migration is that theatre of migration pays attention to imagining the contact zone between those who arrive and those who lay claim or ownership or custodianship over a territory. Based on these 2 definitions of what a migrant, you know, what migrant might mean in migrant theatre, we started working. We had a couple of, so we have our working questions. First of all, who does the imagining? Who are the theatre makers who are imagining this encounter between, you know, this encounter with the foreign, with the other in this context? And secondly, what are the ethics of such encounters? What kind of dramaturgies and politics are emerging from such performances of migration? And lastly, how can migrant theatre facilitate a structural repositioning of migrancy away from crisis narratives and also beyond aesthetics? And so these questions really were forged in conversation. So our work was really forged, you know, in conversation, and especially in conversation with our network, which is the Migrant Dramaturgies International Research Network. And I just want to say a few words about this network, because it was really key, and it was an important element of our collaboration, and also this network being brought in, you know, to the Bristol Theatre Department. That was also a very important element of this partnership. And so one of the main benefits of the the Benjamin Meeker professorship was also that the theatre department at Bristol became part of this network through Katja and other colleagues. And so I just wanted to say a few words about the network, to talk a bit about the project model. So really our model is research led. So first of all, the network, has over 20 academic members from 17 different universities in Europe, USA, Canada, and Australia. And our model is led. It's a research-led network, but we work very closely with theatre makers and generally the creative industry, and also we curate outreach events that combines theatre making with scholarship and research. And the outputs of these projects are always twofold, because they are academic outputs and creative outputs at the same time, or it has each of these projects have an academic and a creative output and impact. And one of these, so to give you two examples, which also kind of framed, or it was informed by this collaboration as part of the Meeker Fellowship. One was our project in London, which was the Migrations Harbour Europe in 2019. And that was a research and an R&D project funded by the Arts Council England. And we worked together with the lead partner on this, which is LegalAliens Theatre. And it really combined scholarship and research with theatre making through LegalAliens' workshops with migrant communities in London. And the main element of it was a Europe-wide call where we were seeking new plays on new plays and new texts on migration. And we received 157 plays from across Europe in, well, quite a lot of languages, really. And so it involved a lot of, translation processes, adaptation processes, and at the end of it, an international panel of readers selected 3 plays from Lebanon, from France, and from Italy. And those received the staged readings at the Arcola Theatre in London in February 2019, I think it was. And as part of this, we also curated, I think it was 5 Q&As and a panel debate on migrant representation at the end of this, the 3 days project in London. And so this was the creative / academic output. And the second one was a special journal issue for Performing Ethos, which is a journal of ethics in theatre and performance. And this special journal issue really looked at ethics and aesthetics of migrant theatre making. And it had a very strong intervention section. So again, in this project as well, we can see that there's a strong collaboration between industry partners and the creative sector and research. And the second definition I want to share with you, it's really like it's a concept, because both of these projects I talked about earlier, they really led us to look beyond, beyond the aesthetics and focus on the host and guest relations in terms of migration. And I just want to share Mika Baal's concept of migratory aesthetics, which sounds like this. For Mika Baal, migratory aesthetics are an exploration of sensory perception conditioned by migration, where aesthetic engagement with migration is to engender politics of contemporary culture as migrant, that is, a culture transformed by migration, but emphatically not a separable minority culture. So for us, this is really important because it really talks about contemporary societies as migration societies rather than contemporary societies with with migrant minorities at the fringes. And this concept, of going beyond the aesthetics of representation and going beyond, theater making and looking into more structural practices, led us to a new project which Katja and I put together last year, and that is the Migrant Institute Project that happened last June, I think it was. And really this project solidified not only how we look at migrant theater making, but also our collaboration as part of as part of this larger project of migrant dramaturgies. And so with the Migrant Institute Project, we really looked at first generation migrant artists in the southwest of England, but also across the UK in the context of Brexit. And we looked at ways and forms of performing belonging and non-belonging. And this was also a project in terms of partnership that had a kind of wide outreach in terms of we established close partnerships with Migration Mobilities Bristol, with Environmental Humanities, with the London School of Economics Media Department, Mid Sweden University, the University of Manchester, and LegalAliens Theatre. And we had, so this was all funded by the Brixton Institute Ideas Exchange grant. And so we've been able to, put together an event, an online event. We were hoping for a hybrid event, but then at the end, we ended up with an online event that really featured a performance workshop online, which was the first time I encountered such a workshop online, and I think it worked really well. And that was led by Lara Parmiani from LegalAliens Theatre. And we had a set of intervention papers from Bridget Anderson, Vicky Angelaki from Sweden, Miria Georgiou from LSE, and Alison Jeffers from Manchester. And around these intervention papers, we developed group discussions on belonging and non-belonging with migrant artists. And we even managed to get together a collaborative poem at the end of the event, which is all of this can be accessed, all the documentation can be accessed on that link that I put there, the presentation. And I think, the presentation can be shared later on. And then I will hand over to Katja now to talk a bit about the institutional impact of this project and the collaboration. And then at the end, I will come back with the third And last definition we used on migration and migrant theatre, and talk a bit about the future focus of this collaboration as well. Katja.
Thank you, Szabolcs. Yes, so the projects Szabolcs has talked about so far, they really were international, European, but beyond Europe as well in kind. But of course, the collaboration also had an institutional impact, very much so, in that it allowed us to link research clusters on migration and mobility, translation, and British and European theatre, which weren't linked before. Beyond the confines of departments and faculties. So we managed to get the School of Arts, the Department of Theatre, together with Migration Mobilities Bristol, which is very much based in the social sciences, with Arts Matter, which is a faculty-wide, if not university-wide cluster. So we've managed to bring those things together because, or through, or with the help of the fellowship, which was really good. Could you do the next slide, Szabolcs? Sorry. There was also an impact beyond, but in line with the institutions. So you can see from the Bristol University Research and Environment Statement, there are 2 points which I think we addressed particularly well. One was the strategic alliance, which I quote from the university's website, is that we're committed to building a global reputation in higher education and research. We will continue to improve our strong record of international collaboration and partnership across our teaching and research base. And really, this MICA Fellowship and the work that Szabolcs in particular has done together with me on the side has absolutely answered to that notion of strategic alliance, of international collaboration and partnership, beyond the research and teaching really, and incorporating the creative industries. And this idea of engaging with the public, again, which is a really strong point in the research and environment statement of the university, where it says that engaging with the public about our work ensures it has impact and relevance beyond the university's walls, and is informed by society's values and opinions. So the events that Szabolcs was talking about, yes, there were academic research events, there were academic speaking, but there were also artists involved. There were migrant artists who joined us, who had nothing to do with university, who had nothing to do with any organized theatres, but who were interested in this as members of a public. That does not make a distinction between migrant at the borders and the home public, if you like. So this engagement with industry and third sector partners, that created really exciting opportunities for both the proposed research projects, the department, the faculty, and the university more generally. So I'm really grateful for all the work that Szabolcs has done, because that has really managed to get this MICA fellowship beyond the confines of my immediate research work with Szabolcs and the department's immediacy, and has really opened this up to the department, the faculty, the university, Bristol, the Southwest more generally. And back to you, Szabolcs.
Oh, thanks very much, Katja. And let me just go there. And so, all these the collaboration and the projects, so the 3 projects, but specifically the last one, the Migrant Institute Project, I talked about a bit, led us to reconsider really theatres of migration beyond our initial focus on aesthetics and migrant representation. And I want to share the last bit, the definition of the migrant put together by a recently established organization in the UK called Migrants in Theatre, because I think it really pushed us towards a more towards a focus on more political on political agency, really. So there's a shift in our approach now. And so Migrants in Theatre talk about migrants who have lived experiences of migration in their lives, who are being profiled as migrants because of the color of their skin, their accent, and other characteristics, regardless of their legal status. Migrants can have a variety of legal statuses, including as visa nationals, temporary and permanent residents, refugees, asylum seekers, traveler communities, undocumented, or citizens. There are migrants who have been residing in the UK for a long time, those born of migrant parents, and those here for a shorter while. So we found this definition really important because it also looks at looks at migration as a multi-generational experience as well, not just first generation migrants, but also second, third generation of migrants to this country. So I want to close with this definition and the arc we kind of created from a very solid kind of focus on aesthetics and migrant representation towards a more political agency focused approach. And so that also kind of defines our next steps in this collaboration and in this research. So our future focus is on structural practices and artistic and institutional practices with a focus on inclusivity, diversity, and solidarity. And we also want to create strategic partnerships with migrant artist advocacy networks, because in the last 2 years, really, all these migrant artist agencies started to, they were established, and during the pandemic in 2020, in March, migrant artists in the UK created Migrants in Theatre movement. Also, in 2019, in Paris-based migrant artists created an agency for artists of exile. And in Germany, in 2018, they created a post-Heimat network that also looked at legacies of colonialism. And in Portugal, there's a very strong organization that emerged in the last 2 years, and that looks at Black representation in performing arts. So really our focus is on how these advocacy groups work and what type of performances they create, but also what type of activism they use to foster social change. So all in all, our kind of the next part, the next part of our work really looks at a rethinking of host and guest relations in terms of migration and theatre. And I hand it back to Katja now to talk a bit about the future of the collaboration as the last slide of our presentation.
Thank you so much. Maybe I'll just hark back to this idea of migration as lived experience and quite a personal take on that, because as we were working through the various stages in our definitions and the project, there I became a citizen. Because of Brexit, because of all things, because I always understood myself as a migrant, and then all of a sudden I was a citizen of this country, which is a strange kind of shifting of your lived experience and framing of your lived experience. So there is something that about that last definition of the migrant as referring to people who have lived experience of migration. With a variety of legal statuses is very much also based in kind of personal experience of all of us involved in this project, and it was absolutely necessary to shift that definition of the migrant, if you like. But let's have a look at the collaboration's future. So in 2019-20, we started the conversation donkeys years ago over a glass of wine and quite nice beer in Tagumurish. But you know, this MICA conversation started in 1920. In 20 and 21, we continued the conversation within and beyond the immediacy of the conversation, as we've just shown you. And the key project of that was the Migrant Institute, which was part of the Brixton Ideas Exchange in 2020. Now in 21, 22, we're hoping to cement and widen the conversation in the institutional, national and international nature. So new collaborations which we are just establishing and cementing include colleagues in the US, in Australia, in Denmark and in Switzerland. And we have some key projects that are coming up so that we can continue this work. And one is a webinar. That's the next one that is in our calendars in June 2021. That's continuing and strengthening and cementing our work with LegalAliens Theatre, Things I Am Not. And I'm sure we can make that the invitation to that available to everyone to join us for that webinar in June. In November, there is a conference in Manchester, which Szabolcs is going to be speaking at, about listening to the voice of refugee artists, again, bringing together the academic and the actual lived experience of the migrant artist and the refugee artist together. And next year, we are editing a special issue of the Journal of Adaptation in Film and Performance on migration and as adaptation. So we haven't stopped. We will continue. And it's been a really, really fruitful collaboration. And we're very, very glad that Benjamin Mica existed so that we could really develop this with the help of the institution. So thank you very much, Szabolcs, for all the fabulous work. And thank you to the Benjamin Mica funded, well, thank you for the money, basically, to make these events possible. And thank you all for listening.
Thanks, Katja. Thanks, everybody. So
if
we
there
were
are
waiting for questions.
Oh, yes, sorry, I meant to.
Do I stop sharing the screen or? Yeah.
You can stop sharing and then maybe we can open it up. There's already a question from Jack Teasdale. Thank you for sharing personal experience. Thank you, Jack. A question of mine was whether there was a time where someone who identified as a migrant came to a point of belonging within a country, where they perhaps no longer identified as a migrant, as it had become a distant experience, i.e. being earlier in the life. I'm sure there is a point, and I'm not sure the two are mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. I think that you can come to a point of belonging and non-belonging, or you can belong as a migrant, and you can belong as a citizen at the same time. So this kind of distant experience of the actuality of the act of migration, of the physical migration, absolutely. I can't remember very much about that enormous suitcase I brought over when I first came. I know it was heavy, that's all I remember. But it's in that sense that first arrival is a distant experience. And I very much feel part of, so there comes a point of belonging, but there also becomes a point of not quite belonging to where you came from anymore. So you're always, I don't think there comes a point when one erases the other. There is always a kind of relationship between the two. I don't know, Szabolcs, maybe you can talk about that too.
Yes, no, that's absolutely right. But I think there's also I think I'm thinking of one, well, not a point, but it comes to a point where I think belonging really comes when, at least on the migrant side, or at least on my side personally, when you don't need to explain yourself. Because for quite a lot of time you need to explain yourself. And then when you don't need to explain yourself anymore, then I think that's where some sort of belonging start to kind of crystallize.
And then, because I've been here a whole lot longer than Szabolcs, there comes a point when you want to explain yourself again. So, you know, I've gone through the, oh my God, I have to explain myself all the time. Everybody, constant. The first thing people who encounter you, the first thing they will want to talk to you about is your status as a migrant, your experience as a migrant, your life as a migrant. Then you trying your hardest not to ever appear as a migrant. And then there comes a point where you don't need to explain yourself anymore. People don't ask questions. They can't quite place your accent. You still have one. Everybody know, you know, I have an accent. My name is a funny name. But people don't really know, am I from, you know, where is that? Where is she from? So there is that moment. And then I think now I'm no longer trying to hide it. You know, and I think there are so that you go, and I'm not saying my experience is the experience of all, but there are certainly stages that go back and forth, and there isn't really that clarity. It's really, there is, where I live in Cardiff, there is this group of Germans who've lived in Cardiff forever, and they're people in their 80s and 90s who belong to this Germans in Wales. They can't speak German anyway, you know, they still have really heavy accents, but they keep asking that there's, when there's events, that they please be held in English, because, but they still 50 years later, 60 years later, still identify themselves as something other than one or the other. So there is always this coming together, which is exciting. It's not a bad thing. It's great. Sorry.
The other question for me, really, and that kind of connects to Jack's question, is how different cultural contexts frame migration. So you know, while in the UK the very strong, you know, emphasis of, you know, on migration and asylum, you know, and all that. In France, for instance, you know, their main kind of approach is exile, which for me always meant ex-kings and queens in holiday resorts, you know, this type of thing. And for them, exile means a totally different thing. Or in Portugal, for instance, that, you know, a very strong emphasis on Black representation, which is also linked to migration, because, you know, this is it's quintessentially about migration in Portugal, because it's you know, they only started to work through their colonial heritage. Yes, so and the you know, the latest approach I encountered, which is really interesting, also because I don't know, you know, why I haven't engaged with that before, is Romanian foundations working with the Romanian diaspora in the UK, Spain, and Italy, for instance. So that type of you know, inter-EU migration, or, you know, which is supposed to be part of a mobility scheme, but, you know, it's still a migration. That's also very interesting, and it has a very strong social implications in terms of kids being left with grandparents at home, and you know, all sorts of really complex social cultural issues. But again, you know, it's quite interesting how we perceive migration, the migrant experience in different cultural contexts, which is also, I guess, it's historically driven.
Sorry, I'm just reading. Maybe I should read Jack's comment. Think out to everyone. It's really insight. Can imagine it is very much scenario dependent. Different individuals experience certain prejudices based on where they reside. Absolutely. Also what they look like. You know, I'm in a very privileged position that I can hide because I'm a white European. And I can, you know, while there are, of course, migrant experiences which are much different and much more complicated and subject to aggression from the host country, and it's a very different scenario depending where you come from. So this is not just where you reside, but also where you have traveled from, where you have come from. So interesting to hear Jack says that there might be stages, perhaps interlinked with own personal growth and confidence. Absolutely. But that confidence and that growth has been enabled partly because I'm a white European. So that confidence and growth is not enabled for all migrants. And the current political scenario in this country in particular is trying its hardest to stop a growth of confidence. But don't, no, I better not go down that road, because we haven't got enough time for my little political rant about what is happening at this moment in time with regards to the Home Office's politics. So I'll shush now. Sorry. Anybody else would like to raise anything or ask any questions? We're not going away. So for those of you who are going to watch this as a recording, please get in touch. If there is anything you would like to discuss with us, you can get in touch with both Szabolcs and me via the university and via the theatre department. So any questions that come up after you listen to this as a recording, please contact us.
Great, thank you very much for fantastic presentations and discussion there. That was really, really interesting. And yeah, we will get the recording up on our YouTube and linked via our website for those who want to watch it later. So we're just putting up a slide now with some details of our contact details. So if it's easier for people, they can drop us a message and then we can put them in touch with you guys and go from there. So hope everyone enjoyed the presentation, and thank you again to our speaker and our chair for fantastic, really engaging discussions.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, and thank you, Szabolcs, for being here.
Cheers.
Thank you.